All right. Hello, everybody. Glad to see people here already and some comments in the live chat already. This is just kind of a celebration that we're going to be having about reaching a milestone in the channel of 150,000 subscribers. So, never thought this would actually be the case when I first started out. And it's taken, quite a while to get here, which for an academic channel, not too bad. It's about 13 years, a little bit over 13 years since I started uploading videos to YouTube. So, what we're going to do is we'll start with a toast. I've got my non alcoholic IPA here. Actually, I'll mention because I'm going to do a lot of thank yous in this that I've got a supporter and becoming friend, Kathmandu, who every once in a while sends me sample packs of non alcoholic beers. And so this is the Untitled Art, which is a great company, juicy IPA, and it's very tasty. So thanks to them for that. So we'll do like a toast, whatever it is that you happen to have on your end. It could be alcoholic, could be non, could be coffee, could be water, whatever you want. So here's to all of you, and here's to doing another 10, 20, 30 years of video production. If we do that long enough, we'll actually fill in quite a few of the gaps in coverage. I'll talk about that in a bit. So here's a toast. Anybody who wants to propose something can. I'll read it. But I'll say, here's to all of you viewers, subscribers, people who enjoy the content, who support it in whatever ways that you do. You're making not just YouTube, but the internet, hopefully a slightly better place because you're helping to get content out there that, helps people understand philosophy rather than just being, getting like a surface level interaction or understanding with it. And I'm going to take a sip before I take up all the time with talking. That's good stuff. And I'm going to say thanks to all of the people who've supported me over the years on Patreon. I also have, buy me a coffee. People do that sometimes, leave their name, sometimes anonymously. Other people have just sometimes given money, and there have been a lot of benefactors over the years. So, it's pretty important, not just in terms of like making a living, which is something I have to be able to do because I've got not only myself but a wife and kids and other people to take care of, but it's also kind of, what would you call it? Proof of concept that you can produce videos that are not particularly high production or scripted or anything like that, but talk about philosophy in ways that make it accessible to people from all sorts of walks of life, from high school students to fellow college professors and everybody in between. If it wasn't for people actually supporting, saying, hey, I like this stuff, do more of it, coming to the various events, whether face to face or online, I don't know, I'd be doing this, 13 years in. So, yeah, thanks to everybody for that. So, there's a lot of nice messages here. Anaya says, congratulations on 150,000 subscribers. Wes Wood, just think how far the channel has come. And Olivia, congratulations. Thank you for all you do. Eddie Didrikson, congrats. Sahil, you're one of my favorite professors on YouTube. Eddie also says, cheers. Oh, for the toast, right? Max Montague, congrats, sir. So, Kaylin, congrats from Ireland. Yeah, thanks to everybody. It's pretty cool to reach this level for a DIY channel where My wife has helped me for a long time in producing thumbnails, but everything else is setting up a camera, setting up the lighting, get in front of the chalkboard, or here in the bedroom with the library and shooting videos, editing them, uploading them, and promoting them in various social media. So I don't have a staff. I don't have an intern or anything like that. It's just basically me and whoever else I happen to be collaborating with at the time. So um, it's kind of been a cool trip. So I did want to talk a bit about the past, but I think I do want to talk more about the future. So I'll just say this, right? A lot of you are familiar with the kind of work that I do. Started out, I'll mention this story because it's always well worth telling again. So I originally was rather skeptical about uploading things onto YouTube, but my then fiance, now wife, who had bought me a flip camera, one of these very early primitive, handheld recording cameras that you could put on a tripod, suggested to me that I should start recording class videos and uploading them. And back then, they got uploaded into the institutional channel at Fayetteville State University because YouTube didn't let you upload anything longer than 10, then 15, then 20 minutes. And class sessions were 50 minutes. And then I started shooting these like Dr. Sadler chalk and talks. And I'd shoot videos of myself at conferences giving presentations. And that was basically what I was doing. Oh, yeah. And I shot a few videos about my book as it was coming out about the Christian philosophy debates. Um, but if it wasn't for her, suggesting, hey, try to use this new technology. Maybe people will like it. Maybe it'll catch on. You got nothing to lose whatsoever. Um, I probably wouldn't have done it because I'm, kind of not politically, but temperamentally conservative and don't like to try new things very much. So it's really to Andy's credit that I'm even here today doing this. And then it just kind of took on a life of its own, right? I started shooting course videos at Marist College, now uploading them in my own channel, producing other things, and people were asking about the existentialism series, the half hour Hegel series. Started doing those core concept videos, doing more videos of talks that I was giving at various places, and it just kind of grew and continued, and people liked what I was providing, and that's pretty important. And it's kind of cool that other instructors and curricula use my videos as resources. That's kind of a proof as well. So Robert, let me catch up on some more of these things. So Robert says very valuable resource for studying Plato independently, which caused an incredible change in my thinking. Cheers, go get a pint on me. Thank you. That's very nice of you. And actually, I'm going to take this in a little detour. So I've got a client and friend who has been studying philosophy on his own. He's also a supporter in Patreon as well. And he's a guy who was a businessman. He's a little bit younger than me, but he's discovered philosophy later on in his life. And he was telling me about a couple months back, I'm finding that like I'm rereading this stuff, and it's almost like there's more and more of it in my mind, and it's leading me to see things differently in my life. And I was like, well, that's what's supposed to be happening in philosophy, right? You're like creating a whole network of ideas in your mind, and they're not all coming from you. They may be coming, as Robert says, from Plato, could be coming from Seneca, could be coming from Nietzsche, could be coming from all sorts of people. And that continual work of progress, building, connecting is really quite important. And if resources help with that, that's awesome. Um, I suppose when I was in undergraduate and graduate school, there were videos kind of available, like on VHS and DVD, you could get like the great courses and stuff like that. But I never found that stuff all that helpful for me as I was studying. But I'm kind of a weirdo, an outlier that way. Um, I think if YouTube had been around, I probably would be watching it as a undergrad and grad student. I probably could have saved myself some time as well. So yeah, so that's all cool. Sunny Blue says, "Congrats, been subbed for 6 to 8 years. Here's to another 13 years." That'd be cool. Yeah. Bruno says, "Congratulations. Wish you all the best from Brazil. I've been following you since 2014, 15. So that's quite a while as well." Gilbert says, "I was watching one of your videos on Aristotle today, which is 11 years old. It has been a long road for you. Congratulations." Yeah, it's interesting with these older videos, right? The content is good, the production. I'm glad I've boosted it a bit, using a lapel mic, making the sound a bit better. Obviously, video formats have gotten, better and better. So a lot of those videos were shot in quite old formats. They're a little bit blurry now. They're probably going to degrade over time, but they're still out there. Ken, good to see you. Ken says, "Congratulations on the subscriber milestone. Very well deserved." Thanks, Ken. Sunny Blue, here's a bit of a throwback. I introduced to you your channel when you featured, as a guest appearing on Clifford Lee Sargent's Better Than Food Book Reviews podcast 7 years ago. Yeah, it's interesting. You make a lot of like collaborative relationships within this domain, and some of them, um, depending on what's going on, who's involved, may be just one-offs, as that one turned out to be. Some of them, you can be connected for a very long time, and sometimes it's fans. Like, just saying hi to Ken. Ken has actually been on our classic metal class. We interviewed him about the new wave of British heavy metal, and so there's lots of cool ongoing interconnections and relationships that can develop and continue on through this. So I do have a question here before we go on to future stuff that I'll tackle from Eddie, who says, "What is the difference fundamentally between Max Stirner and Ayn Rand?" Okay, they're both egoists, right? Stirner is very much emerging from a post-Hegelian point of view. Ayn Rand is kind of doing her own thing. Um, I mean, both Stirner and Rand are sometimes unfair to other philosophers who they criticize. Um, Rand, especially to, like Plato and Kant and people like that. And I suppose you could say that. So, I mean, Stirner is Hegelian in a way, but also reacting against Hegel. Rand is drawing on Aristotle, getting him mostly wrong most of the time, reading him kind of tendentiously in ways that if Aristotle were around, he'd be like, "Holy crap, what are you doing?" Um, and I would say, there's probably, you could say, if you want thoroughgoing, like go to the very bottom egoism, Stirner's the way to go. Rand has actually still got quite a few like, "Nah, you can't do that, you can't do that, you can't do that." Not if you're a real egoist, right? I mean, they both do have some sort of project of trying to, like, once you've actually said that everybody should be egoists, how can you have any cooperation? So they share that, you could say, in common, right? All right, so here's Captain NA. "I'm 20 and I've been subbed to you since I was 17. I used to struggle with your videos, but I never unsubbed or strayed from watching your videos. You really made philosophy easy for me." Well, that's great. Yeah. And, you know, on that note, getting away from like videos and just thinking about philosophical texts, it's okay to struggle, and even to, at certain stages in your life or age or development, to say, I can't do this right now. When I was an undergraduate, starting out at 20 years old at Lakeland College, being a philosophy major, I tried reading Descartes' Meditations on my own that first semester. and I couldn't figure out what the hell was going on. That's right. Um, and so, I had to wait until later on before it started making much sense to me. I also mentioned reading Albert Camus' Myth of Sisyphus in high school and maybe understanding 1/10 of what was being said in the work. And sometimes it takes that, right? You need a certain background developed, or you need to like have the right kind of life experiences for some of these things to like really catch. They make sense to you intellectually but not affectively, or stuff like that. So that's that's okay. And the fact that you're making progress, that's great. Plato Symposium is hula hooping a valid form of arete? It's a trivial form of arete, I suppose, because arete just means excellence. And you could be a great hula hooper, but that doesn't translate into like intellectual or moral virtue. It's just a skill that you got. Dan the Man, congrats, Dr. Sadler. Been watching since summer of 2015. Best channel on YouTube. Thanks so much. Yeah, and you've commented a lot over the years. Black Prairie, here's an interesting question. What core concept series are you most proud of? One where you felt like you presented the ideas of the philosopher as best as possible given the time frame. Yeah, that's actually a great question. Not something I've actually thought about, and I don't usually think about it in terms of like being proud of or even like satisfied with, but why not, right? So I don't know that there would be one single one, but and I'll pick series where I actually did finish the text, right? Not series that are still, so to speak, ongoing. A recent one, Kant's Prolegomena to Any Future Metaphysics, I decided to do that text in part because it needs it, right? It's an important philosophical text. There's not a ton of in-depth resources on it out there, and it is quite helpful, I think, if you're going to try to approach the larger work, the first critique that the Prolegomena is connected with and covering some of the same grounds with. And it took me like 30 something videos, I want to say. And at a certain point, I was like, man, when am I ever going to be done with these? Right? This is a lot of stuff. But then I thought, well, it is important to cover all of this stuff. It you know people are going to get confused. It's Kant at just about any point within the work, and maybe this can help them out. And then it's nice to have a complete series too. So, I would say that I also really do like the series that I've done most of on David Hume's Inquiry Concerning Human Understanding, but that's not a finished one. I need to finish that over the summer. There's like ones from chapter one of the work that I never got to, some topics, and there's ones from the end of the work as well. Um, I would also say, years and years back, I decided I would do an entire series of core concept videos on Aristotle's Nicomachean Ethics. And I did it. I didn't do it all at once. I did some early on, and then I did some on all the virtues in books 3 and 4 for my undergraduate students. And then at one point, I was like, I should do the whole damn text, right? So I did it, and I used it to teach an Aristotle Nicomachean Ethics class, and I've put that they're sort of the content in the online class that I have available that covers the entire Nicomachean Ethics that uses my class resources. Um, so I think those are probably the ones I'm most happy with, and they're all longer series. All right. Eddie says, thanks for your reply. I wish it could be more, but I'm not a very wealthy man. Thanks again for all you do. Every little bit helps, as they say, right? And I will say this too on the topic of support. So, I work part-time as an adjunct teaching philosophy, which doesn't pay particularly well. And so most of the money that I make as my income is, the professional services that I offer, like um, tutorials, public speaking, philosophical counseling, consulting on ethics stuff for businesses, various projects that I do, and then all this other sort of public philosophy stuff. So if you're contributing to that, even just a little bit, you are helping me to do what it is that I do. You're a part of this larger project that you could say. So, that's awesome. Captain NA says, here's a great question. How much of your teaching on YouTube was helpful in assessing your actual real life classroom lectures? I assume you might have seen your videos quite a few times before you actually posted them here. So I didn't see my lectures quite a few times before I posted them in YouTube. I would do a lecture, and usually later on that afternoon, it's uploaded in YouTube and people can watch it. By the time that I was recording lectures, um, we'll put Fayetteville State aside and we'll just talk about Marist. I had in 2011, when I first started teaching at Marist, and I was teaching primarily ethics and intro to philosophy, I had been teaching for 9 years. So I had a lot of teaching experience, and I'd been teaching a lot of what we call service classes, which are for non-philosophy majors. And they're, these basic level classes like intro, ethics, critical thinking, logic, business ethics, various other applied ethics and things like that. So I'd gotten really good at giving lectures that were not just me standing up and pontificating, but actually like engaging the audience and keeping them, interested in what we were talking about and coming up with examples on the fly that they could relate to, and speaking in a way that students who weren't particularly interested in philosophy or didn't have a background in it could relate to and understand. So I was pretty happy with, you could call it, my performance in the classroom. Now, it's very interesting you ask about assessment. So I didn't really use them too much for, like looking at them and saying, oh, I should do this differently or do that differently. But when I was at Marist, it was kind of customary, and it's a good practice, that the chair would like come in and observe you teaching. And I think that the chair at the time did that once, but after a while, she's like, well, I don't need to do that. If I want to see a lecture that you've given, I can just go to your YouTube channel and it looks like you're doing just fine, So they were actually used for assessment of me as a teacher, but I wasn't using them as a teacher myself. Plato Symposium: is the political body a body in the sense of embodiment, or a bodily with bodily systems? The body politic is writhing in its tears of fire amid this horrible time of malady, disarray, and woe. I mean, you know, this can't be that serious of a question. It doesn't. The political body isn't embodied, and it doesn't have bodily systems. It's a metaphor that we use, right? Um, and I'm not even sure it's really a great metaphor anymore. Oftentimes, it gets harnessed and used for kind of organicist notions of the state that usually tend to appeal to hardcore right wingers who are concerned with things like, ooh, these people coming in are like a virus or a bacillus or things like that. We need to get our systems against them. So, I don't know that it's that useful of a metaphor. Elijah Miller, congratulations on 150,000. Great to see. Thanks. Yeah, great to see you here. I'm actually caught up on comments. Let me say a little bit about the future. So I'm actually going to shoot an update video pretty soon because we're getting close to the beginning of the month. So I don't think I need to say ooh, this coming month I'm going to do this and this and this. But what I will say are um, two sort of topics, right? What I'm going to continue doing and building and trying to fill in gaps, and then the new stuff that I want to do. So, I mean, I've brought out a couple kind of interesting types of videos in recent years, like the self-directed study, the fake quotes, the um, Sadler telling stories, the ideas that matter conversations. What else comes to mind? The quick takes and stuff like that. So I'm going to keep on doing all of those, right? I'd like to do them a bit more regularly to fill things out. Same thing with book reviews. Book reviews, I am far behind on the books that I have stacked up. I gotta start cranking out more of those while I've got the time to do them. Um, and there's the core concept videos, right? So there's huge gaps, you could say. And when you look at the number of them, there's like I want to say there's probably close to 1,500 core concept videos now at this time, maybe 1,400, covering a lot of different thinkers and texts. But if you like look across, and just in Western philosophy, right? If you look across like the whole spectrum of what's there are some huge gaps in coverage. So I certainly would like to do more texts by some of the thinkers that I've done before, like, Seneca. There's a number of shorter treatises that I'd like to get to. Cicero, Aristotle. I started the Poetics, didn't finish up with it. Started Politics, but only did a bit of book one. Same thing with Metaphysics. The Rhetoric, I did a bit of book two. I'd like to fill in those sort of gaps. Do some more of Kant. More Hobbes, more Hume. But then there's also thinkers I've just not gotten to, right? So, like let's take modern philosophy. People are always saying, do some Spinoza. And yeah, maybe I will do some Spinoza, but I also need to do some Locke. I need to do more Pascal. I've got Descartes pretty well covered, although maybe I should also do the Passions of the Soul sometime. Bacon would be good to do. Jean-Jacques Rousseau, obviously, Mary Wollstonecraft. There's quite a few thinkers in that time period and spectrum I just haven't gotten to, right? Or Hegel could certainly use some more core concept videos. You might say, well, you already did the whole phenomenology. Maybe you don't need to do that, but it's a different kind of take, right? Um, so I want to fill in gaps like that. Eventually I will be applying the half-hour Hegel methodology to another big book. Probably starts being a nothingness, but I think I would more prefer, before I do that, to do a couple shorter books like I did with Epictetus's Enchiridion. Same method, by the way, in those Enchiridion commentary videos. So I'd like to do that kind of work. Obviously, I'm going to continue on with doing the monthly stuff like the Understanding Anger 2.0, Worlds of Speculative Fiction, Classic Metal class. We just had a great Classic Metal class yesterday that I'll be posting later on, not today, but later on this coming week. And then there's like new stuff. I said for a while I want to do reviews of non-alcoholic beers. I think that would be a lot of fun. I'd like to start, once I actually get back in practice enough, doing some more banjo cover videos with me and, you know, taking just me and my banjo playing and singing, doing stuff that it's all cover tunes. I'm not doing anything original, but maybe people would get a kick out of that. I got to kind of get my act together with the shorts. I've been like just taking some videos that were kind of cool from the past, cutting them up and putting them in there, or taking videos of the cats and kittens and things like that. Um, it might be good to like make use of actual shorts. And I've got to do videos also about like the services that I offer. so people actually know what tutorial services are, or philosophical counseling, or things like that. And I don't know what, there might be other things that would be cool for me to do. It's really a matter of like time, preparation, and then what equipment would be required for it. Because I don't really want to have to get my hands on a lot of new equipment. I'm kind of cheap and lazy that way. So, all right, let's see. Black Prairie says, it's wild to realize I've been studying philosophy for 3 years, which means I've been watching you for 3 years, going to take master's class this semester, finally going to. What's some advice for someone just starting out graduate classes? Um, I mean, it's kind of common in grad school, I would say, for people, grad students, to kind of get into like comparison matches with each other and try to say, I'm smarter than you, or I know this text better than you do, or stuff like that. And I think you should probably try to avoid that. Don't get drawn into those sorts of things because they're always unproductive. Um, Realize that even your professors generally just know a narrow range of stuff. You'll get a lot of people telling you like, this is the field of philosophy the way we understand it, or this is what all everybody's reading these days. And just realize that I'm not going to say it's totally false, but there's a lot of you know saying that what's happening in this small area is the world of philosophy in general. And I mean, that was happening in my time, and it happens all the time. So that might be helpful, right? Um, Captain NA, sometimes I feel dejected when facing a complex philosophical text. The dejection is not because I cannot understand the text, but I sometimes feel, what's the point? Why theorize so much? We die anyway. Well, yeah, that happens to a lot of us. But you can say, well, what do you want to do with this time before you die? Is I mean, because you're stuck with the time that you have. Um, Maybe you've got the wrong expectations of what philosophy is supposed to do for you, or philosophical texts are supposed to do for you. Um, they can help change your life, but they're not like an automatic guaranteed magic bullet. And you got to kind of piece them together with other stuff, you could say, right? um Guy who lives for art says, congratulations, looking forward to all these future projects, rock on. Yeah, I'm looking forward to doing them and then also having them done. When you're actually doing things, sometimes it's fun, sometimes it's work, sometimes it's both, right? So, Ken says, Hobbes would be interesting. I've always struggled to get to grips with Leviathan. Yeah, and by the way, I will say this: nobody needs to read the entire work Leviathan. The most interesting stuff for us is within the first two books, unless you are, into biblical interpretation and you want to see a really weird, kooky, idiosyncratic theology developed, because that's what Hobbes is providing you with in book 3 and book 4. I tried to get myself out of the sunlight while I was recording this, and it keeps creeping over because we have this skylight up there. There, you can see it, shining down on me. So I'm going to be kind of stuck. Let's see if we can. That's probably even worse. All right, this is going to get bad after a while. We'll see what we can do. Plato Symposium. Do students realize they're in over their heads? I was a charlatan in graduate school, but felt the thrust of Wittgenstein's poker in undergraduate studies, if they could ever be considered study. Yeah, I mean, sometimes students realize they're in over their heads, and sometimes they don't, right? And that could be undergrad or grad students, and sometimes even professors don't realize they're in over their heads. And so it's going to vary considerably, I suppose, from person to person, program to program, philosopher to philosopher, things like that, right? LLS, you should get an animator for your videos. I think they would be really popular. No interest in doing that. There's enough people out there doing glitzy animated crap that's kind of superficial and gets a lot of views, but that's not what my mission is. And I try to preserve the, you could call it ethos, the character, the commitments of the channel. I get opportunities all the time to do sponsorships for brands that would have nothing to do with my channel, and I turn them down because why would I do that? Just to make a buck, and then basically rent out some space to people who might not see eye to eye to me on what even a good product is. So I'm not going to do animation. There's enough people out there who can do that. Philosophy Tunes, congratulations on 150K. Any chance we could see some Dewey videos in the future? Well, that's interesting. I'm not a fan of John Dewey, and it stems in part from having spent a lot of time with Deweyans at a major Dewey place. I even worked for the Center for Dewey Studies for a semester as well as a research assistant. I've never found Dewey a particularly clear writer, and he's also rather unfair to a lot of other philosophers who he criticizes. So, I've never like been that into his works. I had to study them, of course, at Southern Illinois University, which had two Dewey scholars, lots of graduate students interested in Dewey. So he was somebody who you had to know, right? But I'm just not into him. So I don't know. We'll see. There's so many other people that I would much rather do before him, including some that I've done previously. Sunny Blue, I'm moved by this milestone of yours. The channel has come such a long way. I'm really pleased I stayed around 7 years for you to reach this in the community you've been able to raise. Yeah, I probably haven't done that much community building as I should. There is a community out there. It's almost impossible to tell how big it is, where my videos are being used, or anything like that. And I probably should put more time and attention into that. Let's see here. LLS, will you ever try videos on analytical philosophy, or will the channel stay more on the continental realm? Boy, I mean, you probably want to look through the channel. You could best characterize what I do as history of philosophy, neither analytic nor continental, because almost all the figures I'm working on are prior to the 19th century, aren't they? I've done analytic philosophy. I've got a whole series on A.J. Ayer. I've got all sorts of stuff in analytic ethics. You just got to actually like look around, and you can find that I've done work on analytic philosophy in the channel already. And I mean, I don't know how you would get the idea that the channel has a continental leaning. Even a lot of the continentals that I do are now kind of within the history of philosophy, right? Like Schopenhauer or Hegel, right? Let's see, Plato Symposium. Someone told me Blackhurst had to stop a riot as his philosophy department was mothballed. The riot consisted of disgruntled philosophy bros from Bendigo. I have no idea what that's about. I don't know what any of these terms refer to. It'd be interesting to see philosophers rioting. That's not usually the case. Black Prairie, for the Being and Nothingness project, what section are you most excited for? What will be the hardest? I found the For Itself section the most challenging so far. I mean, I wouldn't say I'm excited about any of it yet. I will get probably excited about it as I actually get close to it, but we're talking something that would happen a couple years down the line. And Olivia, do you have any thoughts on Richard Niebuhr or Reinhold Niebuhr? Recently became familiar with them. I'm excited to check them out. We read, I think it's Reinhold Niebuhr's Moral Man and Immoral Society in an honors class back in college, and I don't think I've read him since. Um, so I don't know enough about him to say anything. Eva Lotta says, "Thank you so much for the excellent teaching you provide. It's very helpful, and I always go to your channel to look for extra material when I take a course. Greetings from Gothenburg, Sweden." So thanks. That's very nice. Andy's here, almost a Scottish philosopher. Actually, is a Scottish philosopher. Congrats, Greg. Thanks, Andy. Um, Ankit says from India, "I'm not an academic student of philosophy, but your lectures help me in my self studies." Thank you. Yeah, that's awesome. Um, YOLO, do you think you'd be willing to cover some of the French theorists of the 20th century, like maybe some Deleuze or Derrida? I have done Deleuze, actually, and Foucault. So, yeah, I'm clearly willing to do them. Plato's Symposium, Heidegger's last writings focused on cybernetics. How do we reconcile this with his supposed medievalism as much rumored scholasticism? Well, you ignore the rumors and you actually read the texts and see whether he is a medievalist or scholastic. I mean, you don't use labels like that as substitutes for actual engagement. So that's kind of a non-issue. Um, and Olivia, any thoughts on Stanley Hauerwas? Again, a theologian I don't read much of. I used to read his stuff a lot more, probably 20 years ago, but don't really engage him much. Sunny Blue, found your channel versus Cliff's Better Than Food channel I discovered 9 years ago versus via his review of Ligatti's Conspiracy Against the Human Race, linked to season one of True Detective. Did you watch like it? Oh yeah, I liked season one of True Detective. Me and my wife both did. Um, so yeah, that was quite good. Captain NA, how to desist the urge to argue with everyone who disagrees with you philosophically. Well, that's a good one. Part of it is developing the self control to actually like keep yourself from saying stuff. And then I would say, realize that you don't need to defend philosophical figures against other people. We don't all have to study the same people or find them valuable. We don't all have to have the same position, and that's okay. Nicholas Harvey, what's your stance regarding interdisciplinary, transdisciplinary work with philosophy, experimental philosophy, etc.? I'm entering graduate school and wanting to research regionalist philosophies, specifically Southern philosophy by using ethnography and engaging anthropology and history. I don't know anything about Southern philosophy. If you mean like the philosophy of the American South, not a project I would be interested in even knowing about, frankly. Um, I mean, experimental philosophy is kind of hit and miss. A lot of the experiments are poorly designed and they draw too many conclusions from it. But you don't have to go to philosophy for that. You can find that in psychology, sociology, all sorts of other fields people do and kind of shoot from the hip kind of work. But there's nothing wrong with it. I mean, philosophy is interdisciplinary if you look at its history by its very nature, isn't it? It's always straddled multiple disciplines. And anybody who tells you that they've got the take on philosophy and how it fits in with other disciplines is parochial or lying to you. All right, Captain NA, did you read any Indian or other Eastern philosophies? Yes. I generally don't shoot videos on stuff where I'm not an expert, so um, there's plenty of other people out there doing good work on that. Um, Plato's Symposium, my essays feel disjointed, but what's the point of connecting things for readers? Ye gods, I find sending out journal articles creates anxiety and trembling. Well, then don't send out journal articles until you can feel okay about it, I guess, Um, why wouldn't you want to connect things for readers? You're asking other people to read your stuff, right? So why not do that? LLS, what are your thoughts on Adorno's view on media? I don't have any real thoughts on that. I haven't been reading Adorno much for the last 10 years or so. Yeah, whatever. Who's your most favorite philosopher? I don't have one. I've got, at any given time, there's probably like 10 top people up there, but I don't have a ton of them. So, boy, the light is really starting to get kind of bad here. I think I'm going to wrap this up in just a minute. So let me just say thanks to everybody for joining in. Um, oh, and Olivia, do you have any thoughts on Judith Butler? So many people seem to either love or hate her. So I'm going to have an observation that doesn't just apply to Butler. When there's like a lot of people who either love or hate a philosopher, it's usually because they don't understand the philosopher very well. Because, you got to be a little bit more, what would you call it, even handed with philosophers. So this is a good place to end. So I'm just going to say thanks to everybody and glad you could join me for this celebration. And hopefully, we'll do this again when we hit 200,000 or 250,000 or stuff like that. So great time. And I will see you down the line.